Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Welcome to our post-cabinet brief for Wednesday, the 2nd of December, 2015. The brief will be done by the Minister of State, Honorable Joseph Harmon. Mr. Harmon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Archer. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, welcome to the post-cabinet press briefing for today. That reports on matters which were dealt with at cabinet yesterday, Tuesday, the 1st of December, 2015. First off, let me say that His Excellency President Granger returned from the Commonwealth Heads of Governments Conference in Malta, and in fact gave Cabinet an extensive brief on his engagements with other heads of government at that important conference. Secondly, Cabinet was briefed also on the security situation and the fact that the terrorist threat which seemed to be prevalent in the world today, that we were not to consider ourselves a territory that is exempted from the threat of terrorism. And in this regard, His Excellency asked that the Minister of Public Security brief Cabinet on the important features of an operation codenamed Operation Dragnet. Operation Dragnet is a joint services operation in which the joint services, in coordination with other law enforcement and government agencies, will conduct intensified security operations throughout Guyana with effect from the 1st of December 2015, and that will run until about June of 2016. What that means is that all statutory security operations will be integrated into this Operation Dragnet, with the end result that we will have enhanced national security and enhanced national security environment. It means that on the borders, there will be an enhanced presence by our armed forces. At the ports of entry, there will be intensified scrutiny by the immigration services. In the country itself, that is in the towns and in the villages, there's going to be an increased presence of police ranks. The Commissioner of Police has given the assurance that all persons who are not engaged on core functions of the police force will be deployed to give an increased robust presence on the streets, in the towns, the villages, and in the NDCs of this country. So we're likely to see an enhanced presence of police ranks on the streets, an enhanced presence of the discipline of the GDF on our borders, as well as greater levels of scrutiny at our ports of entry and ports of exit of this country. Cabinet was briefed also on the outbreak of a red palm mite infestation in the coconut industry, and in that regard approved the sum of $49 million for the purchase of chemicals, equipment, and safety gear for distribution to coconut farmers at a subsidized cost to assist in combating this red palm mite infestation. The Minister of Agriculture briefed Cabinet that The coconut industry, which is basically a coastal industry in regions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10, would have been affected by this, and that the farmers, more particularly in regions 2 and 3, are the ones that are more seriously affected. And in this regard, technical teams from the Ministry of Agriculture have been deployed to those areas to assist the farmers in getting over this important, in dealing with this very important matter. Cabinet was then also briefed on an invitation by Microsoft for the advisor on e-government to attend a training program in Fort Lauderdale, United States of America. This program will address the issues of how cloud computing can transform the workplace, and is in keeping with government's commitment to deliver ICT services to all public agencies throughout Guyana. The program is fully sponsored by Microsoft, and we are of the view that it is very important for the development of that unit. Cabinet approved the award of a title for state land to the Uncle Eddie's home by way of a deed of gift. The Uncle Eddie's home is located on 3.1172 acres of land at Jackson Street, Tuckville, Georgetown. The government has found it necessary to grant title to the Association of Uncle Eddie's Home to facilitate the further development of the home for care for the elderly. The association, which was registered as a friendly society since April 1973, has been in occupation of that land, and because they have not had title for it, it has actually stymied the development of the home. It is the Cabinet's hope that with the granting of this deed of gift, so that the home can have a title, it will facilitate better facilities for our elderly who actually are who live there. Cabinet approved the reinstatement of tax-free overtime benefits to bauxite workers. In 1988, bauxite workers were granted tax-free concession on overtime work. These concessions were enjoyed by workers until 2007, when they were arbitrarily taken away by the previous administration. This withdrawal adversely affected the earnings of bauxite workers, mainly in Linden and Kokwani, and was seen as a punitive exercise. So this basically is correcting that situation. Cabinet approved draft legislation to ensure gender equality in the award of industrial and survivors benefits under the National Insurance Scheme. This by way of an amendment to the National Insurance and Social Security Benefits Regulations. These amendments will be laid in the National Assembly shortly for its consideration. And what it will do, it will ensure equal industrial and survivors benefits for men and women employees under the National Insurance Scheme. The present arrangements does not facilitate women to benefit from this facility. Cabinet granted its no objection to the award of several contracts. These contracts amounted to this in the sum of about $1.490 billion, and covered infrastructural work in Region 3 to the tune of $271,525,170. And these included works, rehabilitation and construction work at Hague Back Dam on the west coast of Demerara, at Virginujan Sideline Dam, East Bank, Essequibo, at Mora Farm, Leg 1 in Region 3, of course, the upgrading of the access roads and bridges at Parika Public Road to Ruby Parika Cross Dam and to Parika Primary School. Rehabilitation and construction of sideline dams at Fellowship and the main access road at Best Village, West Coast, Demerara. What I'll do later on, I'll give you a sort of a printout of all of the contracts that Cabinet gave its no objection to, so that you can follow. So I'll just summarize the major contracts as the Cabinet gave its no objection to. In Region 4, for a total cost of $327,943,436, and these were for road works in the main at 3rd Street, Caneville, on the east bank of Demerara. I think many of us who, during the course of our campaign, had actually gone into Caneville would have recognized the condition of the roads. So we are rehabilitating 3rd Street and 4th Street, Caneville. And these are rehabilitation works in the sum of $34,945,000 for 3rd Street, and for 4th Street, the sum of $32,980,000. There's also construction work and rehabilitation work at Diamond, at Grove, at Little Diamond, the construction of a burial ground at Burial Ground Street, at Grove. There's also the special needs school street at Little Diamond. So there's a lot of work that will be taking place in the Grove, Little Diamond area, construction work, and we've actually urged that the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, once they receive these no objections, that the contractors who have been identified, that they get to work immediately so that relief can be brought to these communities without any further delay. Cabinet also gave us no objection to several other contracts on the east coast of Demerara in Region 4, and in Region 5, several contracts in Region 5 itself. But more importantly, the contract for the rehabilitation of the rehabilitation and construction of the Burma Road. You recall several trucks being stuck on that road, and sometimes once a truck is stuck on the road, nothing else can pass. So Cabinet gave its objection to the contract in the sum of $72,216,000. That is for the Burma Road. And for the Maikoni Branch Road, the sum of $69,704,000. And these are two important roads in the Maikoni area. Several other smaller roads will also be constructed at Profit in Abari, and the rehabilitation of also other smaller roads in that community. Cabinet also gave its objection to the award of a contract for the rehabilitation of the road from the Brian Sucre Junction to Madhya. Those of you recall the minibuses on that road, several buses that have been overturned because of the condition of that road. We're going to be spending over $32.8 million in trying to fix that road so that the people who travel from Madhya to Georgetown can at least travel in a certain level of comfort. Cabinet approved or gave us an objection to the expenditure of over $69,432,000 for the construction of potable wells, potable water wells, at Port Morant in region number 6, $67 million. It also gave its no objection to the construction of potable water wells at Sophia in Region 4 in the sum of $52,999,804. Several other contracts were awarded, but I said to you in the main, the sum was over $1.49 billion, and they would cover matters in the entire country, and matters which we hope that those persons who have been awarded those contracts can mobilize quickly and get the work done. Cabinet was also briefed by the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs on his attendance of a meeting of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, the plenary and working group meetings, which were held in Trinidad and Tobago over the period 23rd to 27th of November 2015. The minister reported to the Cabinet that the conclusions of the 9th follow-up report, which he read to Cabinet, offered a list of recommendations. He added that the report stated that the overall level of compliance had significantly improved, for which Guyana should be commended. This is what the report said. He further stated that the minister further pointed out that 9 of the CFATF recommendations dealt with terrorism. And as a result of the attacks which took place in Paris, France, pressure was being exerted to get countries to implement core recommendations on terror financing. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the main issues that were dealt with at Cabinet. Finally, however, Cabinet also gave its no objection to the appointment of certain boards within the public infrastructure sector. That, for example, the Public Utilities Commission, the composition of that board, Cabinet approved. The persons on the board, the commission, Justice Prem Prasad, the chairman, Mr. Morris Solomon, commissioner, Mrs. Deela Britton, commissioner, and Mr. Rajendra Bisesar, commissioner. Cabinet also approved of the appointment of the board for the Sea and River Defense, which is a very important board, and the chairman of that board, it's a board that comprises 19 persons. The chairman, Mr. John Cush, who is a member of the Guyana Association of Professional Engineers. He's the chairman of that board, and there are 18 other persons who are so named. Cabinet also approved of the appointment of members of the Guyana Gold Board. The chairperson is Mrs. Jocelyn Williams, and the other members of that board are Mr. John Yates, the general manager of the Guyana Gold Board, Mrs. Joanne Homer, a representative of the Bank of Guyana, Mrs. Susan Bullen, and Mr. Michael Summersall. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the matters which engage Cabinet, and I am prepared to take any questions which you now have. Yes, please.
Mr. Harmon, could you say what essentially will be the major objectives of this Operation Dragnet, and what has influenced the government's decision to have it? And as I have the microphone, sir, in terms of the specialty hospital, we were previously told that that Fetters Lloyd was not considered, its application was not considered favorably by the NPTA, it was disqualified. What has led government now to consider that application in light of its disqualification? And will Guyanese in large numbers be employed in this project?
All right, well, two questions. Let me deal with the security matter, which is as a part of my brief. The other one, you're going off of the brief, so I can take that off of the brief. I'll deal with the brief matters first. The security operation Dragnet, you know, at Christmas time, there's always an increased presence of ranks on the streets because you have increased levels of economic activity. Businesses are open for longer periods of time. You have more people shopping. There's a lot of actual cash because of the type of economy which we have. People move about with larger sums of cash. And so it was felt necessary to ensure that the businesses got the assurance that government is taking their concerns into putting some form of action in place, that the Minister of Business, to whom several of these complaints had been made, had actually been a part of the conversations, and in fact he has actually been asking for some time that we put in place some special arrangements. So that is one. The other, of course, is the crime situation, which we've basically looked at very carefully and decided that we needed to put some additional measures in place to ensure that people feel safe as they go about their business, people feel safe in their homes, and people feel safe in their schools and in whatever the communities. So the first feature had to do with safety and economic considerations. The other one, of course, had to do with the fact that terrorism has no borders, no defined borders. Terrorism can occur anywhere. And if we feel that you are immune from it, I believe things that happened after the attack in Paris, you had incidents in Mali, you had incidents in Russia. In fact, right here in the region, I think there was some talk about terrorist influences in Trinidad and Tobago and so on. So we are not immune from that. And therefore, it will be remiss of a government if it does not put into place arrangements which will secure its citizenry. And so we are not waiting for something to happen. We are putting in place arrangements which will secure, make our citizens safe, and that it will not come as a surprise if something were to happen and we were not in a position to do something about it. Additionally, you'd recall that we always have secure situations on our borders. You know that there's an election that will be taking place in the month of December in Venezuela, and therefore we always have to be on the alert for these things that are occurring on our borders. The controversy with Venezuela over our border is still something that is being discussed. It's still being dealt with at certain levels of the United Nations. Of course, you know, only recently there were some statements in Suriname about the New River and so on. So we have to take these things seriously. And as your government, it is our responsibility to ensure that the citizenry of this country are safe and that you can go about your business in a manner that is conducive to development, enjoyment, entertainment, and these things. So we want a happy country, we want a good life for all Guyanese, and it is part of that process of ensuring that we have that good life. I will deal with the other question of the specialty off of the brief. I will take questions on the brief first.
Adam Harris, Prime News, sir. You talked about expenditures, contracts for a series of developments in Region 4, but there has been no mention of those roads, East Bank Demerara Extension, East Coast Demerara Extension. What's going on with them, sir?
Those roads are of a different quality and a different type. These are roads which have been approved for expenditure in our 2015 budget. So we are now rolling out these projects, which are 2015 projects. The highway extensions and the roads that you're talking about will feature in our 2016, because some of them are still at the conceptual stage, some of them are still at the expression of interest stage, and some of them have actually gone out to tender, but the persons who are the grant fund entities have found some difficulties with the actual contractors in some of these cases. So that is a process that is not engaging us at this point in time at Cabinet in 2015. But we believe that those will be featured in 2016 and onwards. Okay, if there are no others on the brief, I'll take a few minutes for those off the brief. You have one pending. Okay, let me deal with the pending one first. The specialty hospital. I believe so much has been said by Minister Jordan on this matter. And I think what we will do in some short period of time is to publish some of the contractual arrangements for the specialty hospital. You'll recall that our objection to the specialty hospital has always been about transparency. It has always been about how things were being done about it. And therefore, what has happened now is that we now get access to some of these documents. And you will find that in the document itself, the contract itself, that there is a provision for if one of the contractors for some reason or the other, either through fraud, and all these words are listed there in the contract, or any other matter of that nature, that the party that is in this case the government can move to either the next person or any other company. So it is stipulated in the contract itself with the government of India that is what can be done. Now, the point you raised about the tender board saying that they were not qualified, I'm not sure at what point how it did not. My understanding was that they were not as qualified as Syringer. Syringer was the choice company, and that Feathers Lloyd's was the second. That's my understanding, but if you seem to have another understanding, maybe I can be enlightened.
Mr. Sir, one of the bases for disqualifying Feathers Lloyd was the fact that it had offered two prices, which the NPTB had frowned upon and therefore disqualified the company. So how could a disqualified company be still in contention? And based on what you said earlier, how can a contract override Guyana's laws and regulations?
No, I would not venture onto the second one, so I put on my legal cap. But what you will find in the contract itself, I'm saying to you, when we make that public, was that what I understood Feathers Lloyd to have done was to offer a sum and then a discount, which made the price different. I think what the tender board might have said was that the discount was not lawful. But in the contract itself, the agreement signed between the parties, that is what is anticipated. So I would ask that we will make that agreement public, and this has always been our concern about the specialty hospital, that too many things were done in the dark, that you were just getting the end result of things, you were not getting the whole process. So I would ask that we'll make that public so that you can be better positioned to argue that. But what I would say is that the Minister of Finance has actually spoken at length on this matter, and there's absolutely nothing more that I can add to bring greater clarity to the situation. I cannot say that right now, but the Minister of Finance, under whose portfolio that falls, will probably deal with that at the appropriate time. But the employment of...
Will there be opportunities for large numbers of Guyanese?
Well, it's a specialty hospital, a specialty hospital.
I'm talking about the
And
construction.
both, no, yeah, okay, what I'm saying now, in the construction, of course, what I'm saying this, let me make this very clear, that there's no construction work that will take place in Guyana that will exclude Guyanese labor. No construction work. Well, I don't know about large numbers or what, but construction is something that's done on phases, right? You have, at the first phase is primarily intense labor, and then as you get closer to the completion, it becomes more technical. But what I would say to you is that in any construction work that is engaged, that there will be Guyanese labor. I cannot say to you whether it's large or small, but there will be Guyanese labor. We're not going to encourage any type of construction work in this country to the total exclusion of Guyanese. Yes.
Sir, just 3 questions. Sorry, Kiana Wilbur, Kitra News. There seems to be a lot of complaints with regard to the delay in the release of the forensic audit reports. Has Cabinet probed in relation to finding out why there seems to be a delay? Because several reports have been completed. Like, for example, the one on NISIL has been completed over a month now, and we understand that it has not even reached the level of Cabinet. Could you say why there's a delay? And secondly, has Baishan Lin submitted the documents which was requested by government so that they can be able to say whether they would move on in terms of sanctions or allow Baishan Lin to continue with the export of logs? And lastly, why has government decided to keep or maintain the main composition of the GGMC board, which implemented certain decisions that while you served in opposition you were against, for example, the $3 billion loan to Central Housing and Planning?
Okay, let me take them one after the other. The last first. That the life of the board, the current board of the GGMC, comes to an end in December. That is this month, December 31st, 2015. And therefore, we are contemplating the appointment of a new board. That is one. So the life of this board comes to a natural end in December 2015. The question of delays in the submission of the audit reports, I don't know what you perceive to be delays, but what I can say is that when these matters get to Cabinet, Cabinet will deal with them. Now, when an audit, let me just explain something else too. When an audit is done, the entity which orders it receives that report. The entity will do some evaluation of it, and then I believe the board of that entity has to have an opportunity to also study the report. Then it is then taken by the subject minister to Cabinet. So it is the subject minister that brings it to Cabinet. And I do not understand that there is any delay in it. What an audit does is that it does certain investigations. When that is done, the responsible minister, the responsible board has to prepare an opinion based on that, and so that Cabinet gets the benefit not just of the audit, but of the reaction of the ministry, the responsible ministry, to statements raised in that audit. So what I would say is that the audit work is not something you rush. Sometimes you have statements that are made that needs to be followed up. And this has been my experience in looking at these things, that you need to have follow-up, you need to have checks, because the auditors may have come to certain conclusions without the benefit of all of the information. Sometimes when they provide the report to you, they will say to you that we cannot make a statement on A, B, and C because these things are not there. So you can get those matters even before it actually comes to Cabinet. So I would say that from the time the audit is completed until the report gets to Cabinet, there are certain things which are done in that stage. So we have not received the reports as yet at Cabinet, and therefore, as soon as the matter comes to us, Cabinet will deal with them expeditiously. By Shenling, I believe Minister Trotman has clarified that matter, that there's no, I think he did say there's no further export of logs by this company, and that the reports which are to be presented, either they have been presented or they are to be presented very soon. I cannot be very definitive on that matter, but I think Minister Trotman has actually dealt with this matter in the public, in the media. Yes. I think. Yes. Mr. Harmon.
Mr. Harmon, will be a new board. There'll be a new board for GGMC.
Yes.
Would any decisions that are pending, including those concerning top officials of that entity, be put on hold pending the appointment of a new board?
Well, this board has its work to do. Until the life of this board comes to an end, it has to act. When the new board takes over, the new board will determine what are matters that are outstanding, which they need to take actions on. But what I can say to you is that the board that is there now, they have to act until the 31st of December, and any matters which come before it for determination. I believe, though, that in the work of these boards, they recognize when they are winding up, and they will take certain steps to ensure that certain matters are brought to finality. So I trust that these boards will do that. As you know, once these boards are appointed, they are autonomous, they are independent, they act in that way. And therefore, we do not give directions to them as to what they should do or what they should not do, save and except that in the public interest, that they act expeditiously on matters which affect a large section of the Guyanese public. I'll take the last question, please.
Last two questions, Jumbo Paul, iNews. The government has been criticized over reports of a plan to borrow some $2 million from ExxonMobil. Can you say if the government is going to proceed with its plan to borrow this money, the reported plan, sorry? And
okay. I can say that this is not a matter which came up at Cabinet, and I think Mr. Trotman would also have dealt with that. It's in the media yesterday, I think, and today.
Good. And sir, two questions. Can you say when will Parliament be resumed? New day for Parliament?
Well, Parliament will, in fact, we're having a meeting of a subcommittee, and I think the 17th of December is the next date that Parliament will sit.
Mr. Harmon, Kurt Campbell, News Source. Could you clarify reports of the appointment of some 30 presidential advisors in diaspora matters by this government? And could you also say what's government's position on Russell's failure to have its workers unionized?
Okay, the first one first is that, yes, we have appointed what we call honorary titles. They are honorary personnel. These are people who actually promote government's image in the diaspora. They are none, in fact, these are all honorary work that these people are going to be done. So there's no pay, there's no anything else. That it's actually a recognition that these are persons within the diaspora who can help to promote Guyana and who can help in promoting business for Guyana. So that is, in fact, what has happened.
Can you disclose who they are?
Well, I don't remember all of the names, but there are persons who've actually distinguished themselves in the diaspora, in particular in the United States of America and in Canada.
And will government be paying like office rental, office services, staff, and so on?
No, I said to you, no. This is an honorific title. These are people who have their own businesses that have agreed to assist in promoting Guyana abroad. So, and you would have seen some of these things in the newspapers. They were posing with the certificates and so on, and the names are there.
Mr. Harmon,
Yes,
Marcel, Starbrook News. A quick follow-up to this.
Oh, Russell. I can't be very precise about Russell right now. It's not a matter which, in fact, came up at Cabinet. And so I'm not fully briefed on it, but I believe our minister within the Ministry of Social Protection, Minister Simona Broom, has been in touch with the company, and that there might be some some movement towards a reconciliation of the positions. But beyond that, I cannot tell you that government has a definite position on the matter.
Yes, on the specialty hospital, sir. Are you saying that it is government's understanding that Feathers Lloyd was the second company qualified to, in the bid, in the tendering process for this contract?
That's the question?
Yes, I'm asking if that's what government is saying, because let me just give you a quick synopsis here. When this contract was given to Surendra, Feathers Lloyd had petitioned, not through the legal process, but they had written asking for the contract saying that they were disqualified unfairly. They have accepted that they were disqualified. That's the bone of contention. Now the finance ministry is saying...
So unfairly is not an important issue in the matter.
Meaning?
No, you said they were disqualified unfairly.
They said they were, because they said it's just semantics with the two bids, right?
Correct, that's right, yes.
But the point is they were disqualified. They didn't go through the 5-day process to object to it. They had written asking for this contract. AFC had said, let the contract be retendered because it's in favor of Surendra. APNU had said, we don't need a specialty hospital at this time. What I'm asking specifically is, your government's understanding at this time is that Feathers Lloyd was qualified then?
Well, let me say this. I'm not going to go down any particular road in this matter because the responsible minister, I think, has spoken on it, Minister of Finance, and that any further qualifications which are necessary, I believe, can be provided by him or the ministry. I am not in a position right now to go about saying either this is so or that is not so. I am not prepared to take that statement